Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Diamond Painting Deep Dives, aka Season 2 of the Weird and Wacky with Mr. Ray. Hey, Mr. Ray.
And also called Theory Tuesday.
Also known as Theory Tuesday. Welcome!
We really need to nail some of this now.
Listen.
Let's go with Diamond Painting Deep Dives.
Yeah.
Yeah?
The
Okay.
UFO edition.
The UFO edition, yeah. And like I said, we're gonna look at where it is now, and I think we'll finish that up today. And we'll start going through UFO stuff chronologically, and then occasionally we'll have the odd episode where we look at some element of the UFO mythos or whatever, you know.
Perfect.
And let's have some crack.
Yeah, let's do it. So today I am working on Cauldron of Myrrh by Diamond Art Club. And if you want any details about diamond painting, if you don't know what I'm doing, or if you're new here, go ahead and have a look at my channel. I have some playlists linked in the eye above, and all the links to everything I'm using and whatnot down below in the description box. Check out episode 1. I'll have that linked. What are we focusing on in today's episode?
I guess today we'll talk about, at the start briefly, about other things that are happening, you know, in kind of an official public record thing. Mm-hmm. And then we'll go on to talk about the legendarily first UFO recovery.
All right,
UFO crash recovery, yeah. Let's
get started.
So I guess in terms of things that are happening, as of the time that we're recording this, just a few days ago, NASA had started a series of like public kind of, they had started a process where they publicly talked about UAPs. They were going to go through all of their records. They were going to have someone audit it, you know? Okay. And basically they've come back. That process took maybe a couple of weeks, you know, like 2 months, something like that. Okay. And they basically, in the middle of September of 2023, came out and said that they've looked through their records, there is something there. They've fallen short of saying anything like it's a non-human intelligence or it's a craft or anything. Okay. But they said there's definitely something they don't understand, and that they're going to start investigating it. So they put together a panel. So it's it's what's the word that I'm trying to say? An admission of knowledge of these things. Yeah, well, it's more or less NASA saying that there's definitely something here that they don't understand, and that they're going to put together a panel to investigate it. Okay. And they said, quite hilariously, and with no sense of irony, that this panel is going to be open and public, and also we can't tell you who the chairman of the panel is. And then with no hint of irony. No. And then people in the UFO community started saying, well, that doesn't sound very open and public, does it? And then eventually they released the name of the person that is going to be the chairperson. And it turns out to be someone from a former member of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Mm. Which are the guys that are reputedly keeping this a secret. Yes. So there's a kind of irony there, you know? And I have a question. When you say the UFO community, are you talking about OSAP type individuals? Are you talking about the UAP like? I'm talking about the whole thing. Yeah, or all of them collectively. Yeah, exactly, collectively. Like basically, I'm talking about people on UAP message boards on the internet. But I'm also talking about, you know, the more public figures as well. Do you know what I mean? Okay. And I guess, like, essentially, it is a thing to do with personalities, you know? Yeah. And, I mean, I know there are some really big, loud personalities. There's big, loud personalities, but, like, I guess, and like, there's loads of names, you know? Mm-hmm. But, like, I wouldn't get too hung up on the names. Like, when they reoccur, we'll know about them, you know, that kind of way. Okay. Like the way Jay Stratton reoccurred and stuff, and we kind of picked up on that, you know. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So hopefully, like for instance, with NASA, there's a guy called Gary McKinnon, and he's a Scottish guy, and basically as a teenager, he hacked into a number of intelligence agencies in the States and a number of governmental agencies in the States, mm-hmm. From his house in Scotland. using a 56K modem back in the mid-90s. And he said when he was a teenager, he spent time in federal prison for this. He was extradited from Scotland. He spent time in federal prison for hacking into all these agencies. And he said that the reason he did it was because he suspected that NASA had images of UFOs or UAPs. Mm-hmm. I will use that.
A little vigilantism.
Yeah, activism, I'd say. And I will use UFO and UAP interchangeably the whole time, you know.
Okay.
And he said that he downloaded, that it took him ages because it was coming in at 4K, but that he downloaded several images and he can locate the images that NASA publicly released. He's also stated that that he has documents that prove that NASA have a special compartmentalized section where people just airbrush out UFO stuff and alien structures on the moon, etc., you know? Mm. So that's kind of the NASA thing. So NASA have definitely pointedly not said anything about non-human intelligence. They just said, yeah, there's some stuff we don't get. We're going to investigate it.
Okay.
You know? And rest assured, we will make our findings public. That's basically what they're saying. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Other things that have happened recently as well is the Mexican the Mexican government have had hearings on kind of alien bodies.
They've had
hearings on alien bodies
recently? Yeah. After the meeting?
Like about 3 days ago, which would have been
mid-September.
It would have been mid-September, yeah. The 14th of September, as a matter of fact. And these are by a guy called Jamie Maussan, who's a Mexican journalist. He's basically the Mexican George Knapp. And if you want to look up Jamie Maussan and look up a photo of George Knapp, they actually look like each other as well. He's huge in kind of like Mexican UFO stuff. These bodies are teeny tiny now, you know? They're 1,000 years old, and they're like teeny tiny, like only a foot or two long.
Sidebar.
Yes.
I heard that people are exploiting mummies of people who were buried like hundreds, thousands of years ago to create these alien bodies.
Yeah, this is not a credible thing that Maussan is doing here. Is not credible. He has some scientists that have said that they've, you know, done analysis on the bodies and they're not human. These bodies were supposedly found in the Atacama Desert, you know, where the Nazca lines are.
Yes.
Do you know, yeah, so the Nazca lines are big in the whole UFO mythos and stuff like that. Yeah, this is, to be honest with you, this is not credible. He tried this in Peru a few years ago, and it did not go down well.
No.
I don't even know how, I mean, they say, I don't know what the situation is. I haven't even looked into it because it's so ridiculous, like
if you look at the pictures, it's
yeah.
I know that the archaeology community has come out against this.
Oh yeah,
they realize what's going on.
Yeah, the whole thing is ridiculous. So I guess that's where we are. There's a lot of official stuff, you know? Mm-hmm. And it seems to be pointing towards, oh, we've got crashed, recovered stuff, and etc., you know?
Yes.
So I guess without further ado, let's just get into that. So there's a number of things that Grush said in interviews with News Nation and on various podcasts, you know, that he didn't say in the House hearing. Yeah?
Yeah. So in the House hearing, he was focused on what? And then
he was focused on the US government and other governments around the world have crashed non-human intelligence craft. The US have recovered bodies, but stuff that he didn't say in it was that one of the crafts that's crashed outside of the US, and it's so big that it couldn't be moved, and that they had to build basically a structure around it, like a building to hide it.
Okay.
And various people have suggested that it was crashed in the mountains of Korea. And there are these big structures to keep an eye on. You know the way Korea is mountainous. And they have these big structures.
South or north?
Both.
Oh.
But in the south. That they have these big structures. They're big circular structures. And apparently they're radar dishes to kind of sniff out North Korean radar and stuff like that, you know?
Well, that makes sense.
But people have suggested that, that's all just a cover, that one of these was built over one of these crashed saucer crafts because they were so big they couldn't move. Other people have suggested that it's down in the Middle East and they've given various different places that it could have crashed, you know? So that's part of it. He didn't say that in the thing. Other things that he said then was that in 1933, this is a direct quote from him here, in 1933, a bell-like craft around 10 meters in size was recovered in Vergiata, in Italy, and it was kept by Mussolini's government until 1944, when it was recovered by agents of the Office of Strategic Services. And the OSS then is the precursor to the CIA.
Okay.
Yep. So he said that. And this is, in fact, the first kind of part of the UAP mythology where an alien craft has been recovered.
He said that off the record.
He said that on the record, but not on the official under oath record. He said other things, but really this is the thing that I latched onto, because it is the earliest kind of mythology about a crashed craft being recovered. And I guess that's what we're going to talk about now. So this story comes from like a fairly famous Italian ufologist called Roberto Pinetti. Mm-hmm. And basically Pinetti's story is that in the year 2000, mm-hmm. The distant future, he received this tranche of documents from a mysterious source.
Ooh.
And the mysterious source claims that their grandfather was a high-ranking member of Mussolini's government. Mm-hmm. And all of the documents pertain to kind of the early to mid-30s. So there's a whole series of telegrams, and the telegrams basically are missives from the government. And they're saying, that they're like demanding absolute silence about an alleged landing on national soil of an unknown aircraft. They're also threatening the immediate arrest of journalists if they report about this aircraft that's landed in Lombardy of unknown origins. It's basically a series of telegrams from the government to various news agencies telling them to be cool and not to say anything about this. It's a matter of national security, you'll be prosecuted, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. So he starts to go and there's another group of documents that seem to be about setting up this secret group called Gabinetto RS-33. And this is basically the setting up of a group of scientists to study this UAP. Mm-hmm. So the story that these documents kind of tell is that they recovered this craft. They moved the craft to an Air Force base in Vergiata, I think is how you pronounce it, Air Force Base, which is maybe about 50 kilometers outside of Milan. And that they put, what's the name of the guy? They put this, oh my notes. They put Guillermo Marconi in charge of this secret organization. Do you know Guillermo Marconi? He's the guy that invented radio.
Oh.
He's one of the inventors of radio, and he's won a Nobel Prize and stuff like that. I'd imagine it's a little bit like Guillermo Marconi is a bit like Nikola Tesla in Italian, because I've heard him come up in other conspiracy theories as well, you know? And I think that he's a bit like that. So anyway, they put this world-famous scientist in charge of it. It's at this Air Force base outside of Milan, and they're all investigating it. So when he sees all these documents, he thinks, well, you know, I'm going to have to go and look into this and see what's the crack with it.
Yeah.
Yep. So he goes down to Lombardy, and he starts talking to people about this. And because it happened in 1933, obviously no one is alive. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But there seems to be like a kind of persistent folk kind of memory in the area that, oh yeah, this happened. I remember my grandfather telling me about it. Do you know, that kind of way? Mm-hmm. And there seems to be this persistent kind of folk memory. He goes and digs around in local kind of local government. What would you call them? Kind of document areas where they have official documents and stuff. And he finds
records and stuff.
Yeah, like the local government records and stuff like that. And he goes and digs around there, and he finds 2 documents that are dated August 22nd, 1936, and they're handwritten depositions that were taken from witnesses to the crash that had happened 3 years earlier. And they draw a kind of cylindrical shaped aircraft with portholes around the side. There's notes about red
portholes.
Portholes, yeah. And there. Oh no, not a portal. No.
That's what
I said. And you know, they've got red and white lights on them, and you know, there's just basically what they had witnessed. Oh, there was a streak in the sky, and then there was a huge crash, and basically from people in the area of Lombardy that had seen this crash, purportedly, you know.
Yeah.
And then he goes and has the documents examined by a document expert and analysed chemically as well. And apparently the paper anyway and all that kind of comes from the mid-30s.
So it is legit.
I mean, you can... with all these things, what you can say is that it's definitely printed on paper stock from the 30s. You know? So kind of buoyed up by...
Or was that guy again? That guy that we watched the documentary on?
Who's that guy?
Do you remember the guy that, like, falsified all those papers?
Oh, the Mormon guy. Yeah.
He did it to, like, so many things.
Yeah.
To prove, like, legitimacy on these people.
He just kept opening.
Got away with it for a long time.
He was over in London in a second-hand shop, and he bought a book and he opened it up. Oh my God, it's an important document.
Yeah. He got so lucky.
Wow, this guy's so lucky. So he goes and he goes and he finds guys, and then people start. I think one of the themes with UAPs is people start coming out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the themes. So you know, he publishes some stuff on this about finding the documents and about the folk memory, etc., and about the tragic documents he has. Mm-hmm. And then this guy comes out of the woodwork, and this guy is Marco Negri, and he's 42 years old, and his grandfather is Pietro Negri, who was the mayor of a town near Milan.
Okay.
That's near where this purported aircraft was stored between the 30s and 44, you know? Mm-hmm. And basically, as the mayor of the town, he's never... I couldn't establish whether Marco had ever spoken to his father, or had ever spoken to his grandfather, you know?
Okay.
Like, I couldn't find anything where he actually says, oh yeah, my grandfather was a lovely man or whatever. He just says that the story is from his grandfather. But he does say that he heard the story from his father. So what we're talking about here is the grandfather telling the father the story, and then the father telling Marco the story.
Yeah.
And then Marco telling Roberto the story.
Grandpa, why don't you talk to me?
Well, he may have been. So anyway, a direct quote from this was... it was a second-hand story told to me by my father when I was a child in the early 90s, but it matches the story of the crash. I was told a strange metal plane with no wings crashed somewhere between Vergiate, I think I'm pronouncing that right.
I think you should just pronounce it the way that you read it, to not offend our Italian viewers.
Well... I think, like, Vergiate. It looks like Vergiate.
Okay.
So then, blah, blah, blah. I was told there was big censorship around the crash. Secret police were sent into the surrounding cities to keep people silent about it. He also says that that his grandfather, as mayor of this little village, kind of close enough to the Air Force base, that he was kind of privy to telegrams and stuff. You know, that the local telegram office, he could just stroll in there and read the telegrams or whatever, and that the telegrams also spoke about 2 recovered bodies, and they were tall with blonde hair that were found inside of the craft. It also describes the craft as acorn-shaped.
Acorn-shaped?
Yeah, which is what Grush said. But like, you know, that's not backup information, what Grush said. That's just Grush reading this and quoting this dude, you know what I mean? But I would point out that the acorn shape is famous from like the Kecksburg UFO. You know, there's photos of a thing on the back of a truck, and that's supposed to be a UFO, and these are all big in the UAP mythology if you're into it. Like, it's also reminiscent of the so-called Die Glock, which is like the purported Nazi UFO. So it kind of ties into the mythology there, and it's an accepted form for things to be in this period, you know. Okay. So that's the crack. Now, and that's it. That's really kind of it in terms of the crash recovery and stuff. In Italy. What do you make of it?
So Grandpa.
Yeah.
Grandpa saw it, told his son. The father told his son.
Yeah. And that guy read Roberto Pinetti's information on the mysterious documents that he received and found. And
I mean, I don't think that it's weird that, like, the grandchild would want to get more information and then they, like, fall down a rabbit hole and they're, like, making it their life's mission to, like, figure out this mystery. Like, that's so many people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that weird. Like, the other kind of thing about this is that, like, I remember when this became kind of like, there wasn't even an internet. Like, I believe I read about it in a magazine because it came out in the year 2000, you know. So I mean, that's the story with it. You know what I mean?
What do you think?
It's definitely it's definitely a story in the UAP mythology. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so that's the story of how the Italian government came across or recovered these crafts in 1933, you know?
Do we have anything like that from the Koreans?
No, like...
Are they just looking and seeing those radar dishes and then being like, oh, obviously they're looking for aliens?
I mean, just from watching UFO things or UAP UFO things, just from being interested and watching them, like, there's definitely it definitely seems to be like an Anglophile and also or Anglophone and kind of, and maybe South America is big as well in it. You know, like, people are interested in it in the English-speaking worlds and in South America, but you don't really see stories from other places. Do you know what I mean? Like, rarely, but not to the same extent.
Yeah.
So you know, in a certain way, maybe it's a phenomenon for that. I guess the second part of the story to just close up this story is how the US came into possession of this craft, because that's the ultimate end of the story. This is according to Grush and according to other people, the first recovered craft that the US gets its hands on.
How'd they get it?
And so the story is that the Office of Strategic Services, which later became the CIA, they were basically an intelligence agency that was set up during World War II, you know? And the story here is that there is an officer who is attached to the Vatican, and his name is Philip J. Corso, And Philip J. Corso is the personal emissary from the US government to a guy called Giovanni Battista Monetti. And Giovanni Battista Monetti is a cardinal in the Vatican.
Oh.
And he later becomes Pope Paul VI.
Really?
Yeah. But at the time, there is a guy called, in charge of the Vatican, who's called Pope Pius XII.
Yes.
And apparently the legend is that, although this part isn't a legend, Corso and this guy Monetti, this cardinal, were in the Vatican and they were working together on a thing called rat runs. And what rat runs were illegally, or kind of like underground ways of smuggling people out of Europe, particularly Jewish people, out of Europe to the British Mandate of Palestine. The British Mandate of Palestine becomes Israel after World War II. But at the time it was basically, they had set up these kind of ways of smuggling. Like, you're a Jewish person, you're in danger, you get to the Vatican, they kind of basically use existing kind of, like, okay, we need to transport you down to X place, and then you're going to get on this boat, here's some documents, you're going to pretend, you know what I mean?
Right.
The same kind of ways of smuggling people to Palestine and also to South America, they used later to get out loads of scientists and engineers from Germany in an operation called Operation Paperclip. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have.
Yeah, so it's the same smuggling areas it's the same smuggling routes that they used for people for, you know, these rat runs and for Operation Paperclip to get people out.
Yeah.
And basically that they had got together, so it was a thing between Pope Pius XII and the American occupational government and the remnants of Mussolini's government after the war. And basically they used all this, they had the craft transported down to the coast, put on a boat and moved to the States. And that was all under this guy, Philip Corso, who was a army intelligence officer with the OSS, working in the Vatican. And that's how the American government apparently got its hands on its first recovered UFO. And that's the story.
That is the story.
Yeah. Now, the parts of that are facts is... The parts of it that are facts is that there were...
That there was an
people
Operation
smuggling,
Paperclip.
that there was people smuggling operations, and there was Operation Paperclip, and they did use some of the same, what would you call them, routes. So that's, I mean, Operation Paperclip ended up moving a load of engineers, you know, and one of the engineers that's famous is he was instrumental in like building the V2 rocket, which was the first ballistic rocket, and his name is Werner von Braun. He ended up being a part of this Operation Paperclip. He was moved out of Germany. He ends up as the head of NASA when they land on the moon. And he makes a series of shows with Walt Disney as well. About space travel and stuff. Yeah. I mean, these are undeniable facts, and I mean, it's well documented. There's a lot of documentation on that, you know. And I guess that's all there is. That's the story of how the US got a hold of the first crashed non-human intelligence craft.
But have we seen it? Have they made it public, or is it just one of those?
It definitely wasn't. It wasn't brought up in the hearing, you know. Because
I thought it was Roswell.
Roswell is the first, like, famous one. And we will talk about Roswell.
Okay.
You know we're going to talk about Roswell. And I suppose that's really kind of all there is to say about that part of it, you know. From now on, we're gonna kind of talk about the history of UFOs and stuff.
The history of UFOs.
kind of sightings, recorded sightings and that sort of thing, you know.
And these are mainly in America.
I mean, it's a global thing. You can see a kind of heat map of where stuff gets reported.
Oh, yeah?
You know? Yeah, I mean, and it's essentially the east and west coasts of the States, the Baltics, down around the eastern Mediterranean, huge swathes of the coast of South America and Mesoamerica. Like, you know, they're kind of like the hotspots for kind of places, you know. And that's essentially it. But the kind of narrative that's being spun at the moment is that governments worldwide, you know, like all of the big kind of geopolitical players, you know, like the States, China, Russia, they all have their own crashed recovery programs and etc. And that's the story. So I guess in the next episode we're going to start from the very beginning, and we're going to kind of talk about Foo Fighters.
Foo Fighters?
Foo Fighters, yeah. We're going to talk about Foo Fighters.
They were my favorite band back in the day.
Yeah. I suppose that's all I have to say, really.
Right, well, thank you all so much for joining us for episode 2 of the Diamond Painting Deep Dives, the UFO edition.
UFO edition, yeah.
We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to leave us, go ahead and scroll down there here on YouTube. And if you don't mind giving us a thumbs up and subscribe for more diamond painting videos in the future, we'll be happy to have you. We'll see you next week for episode 3. Take care, stay safe out there, and we'll see you next time. Bye!